Sorry, this is one of the organisers just testing for colleagues in the room. Can you hear us in the room?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining here in person and online. And welcome to this IGF Open Forum on developing a secure, rights-respecting digital future. My name is Neil Wilson. I come from the Cyber Policy Department of the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And I'm delighted to be chairing this session alongside such an esteemed panel at such a pivotal moment in global digital governance. You will all have heard a lot this week about the critical juncture we find ourselves at here at the 20th anniversary and indeed the 20th edition of the IGF. Following the adoption of the Global Digital Compact and amid the WSIS Plus 20 review, both the scale of the challenge and the urgency of addressing it has arguably never been clearer. We have been continually reminded this week, as in our kind of daily lives, that the digital world is no longer a separate space. It's the very infrastructure of our economies, our societies, our daily lives. And how we govern these technologies is critical to how we govern ourselves, and especially for those of us undergoing digital transformation. Indeed, we're in a period of immense change, and it shows no signs of slowing as we embrace new and emerging technologies. And with this transformation comes a really complex web of challenges: cybersecurity threats, widening digital divides, ethical dilemmas in AI, the urgent need to ensure ultimately that digital transformation respects human rights and promotes inclusion. But this session is about more than just identifying problems. In line with this year's IGF theme of building governance together, this session is about exploring collaborative, inclusive, and accountable solutions. So today we'll be asking a wide range of questions. How do we ensure that all voices, especially those historically excluded, are heard in shaping our digital future? How do we connect the unconnected? How do we balance innovation with rights protection? How can we build resilient, rights-respecting digital infrastructure that serves everyone, everywhere? So to help us unpack these questions, I'm joined by an outstanding selection of panelists who I will actually ask to introduce themselves, so it's not just me speaking at this top section. So to my right, we have Alessandra Lustrati. Alessandra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Neil, and good morning, everybody online and in person. Thank you for waking up this early to join us. I'm Alessandra Lustrati. I'm the head of the Digital Development Cluster in the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. I'm also a Senior Private Sector Development Advisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra. I think online we have Samantha O'Riordan from the ITU. Samantha, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. So my name is Samantha O'Riordan. I'm based at the ITU in Geneva, and I am part of the ITU development sector, and working actually with Alessandra, we have a partnership working to assist several countries in connecting the unconnected.
Thank you, Samantha, for joining us. Great to see you. Also joining us online, we have Leonard Mabele. Leonard, are you with us?
Yes, hello Neil. Hello everyone. Hope you can all see me. My name is Leonard Mabele. Greetings from Kenya, and I lead the research and innovation at the African Advanced Level Telecommunications Institute, AFRALTI, which is based in Nairobi. And I'm also a PhD candidate at Strathmore University, and with the two institutions, that is AFRALTI and Strathmore, we've been working closely with Alessandra through the Digital Access Initiative at CDO. Looking forward to speaking more.
Thank you, Leonard. Great to see you. Next, we have Professor Luzango Mfupe. Professor, can you hear us?
Yes, now. Good morning, colleagues. I'm Luzango Mfupe. I'm a chief researcher at Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSAR, here in South Africa. My area of research interest is connecting the unconnected, and I've been working with Alessandra and FCDO in a number of initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And now returning to the room for our final panelist here in Oslo, Maria Paz-Canales. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much for the invitation from FCDO to be here speaking with you. I'm Maria Paz-Canales. I'm the head of policy and advocacy at Global Partners Digital, a civil society organization based in the UK, but working globally with partners across different regions in underpinning human rights consideration in digital policy.
Thank you, Maria. So each of our panelists really brings quite a unique lens to this conversation, and as do you, our audience, both here in person and those of you joining online from all around the world. And it's really wonderful to use this opportunity to bridge these different perspectives, encourage some multi-stakeholder dialogue from across government, industry, academia, the technical community, and civil society. So together we're going to explore how we can shape a secure, inclusive, and rights-respecting digital future. Just a very quick note, I suppose, on how we will run this session. To kick things off, each of our panelists will provide some opening remarks on the principles they see as most relevant to developing a secure, rights-respecting digital future. And then we'll dive into discussion as a panel before we open it up to our audience here, both in the room and those of you joining online. So without further ado, Alessandra, would you like to kick us off with the principles you see as most relevant to developing a secure and rights-respecting digital future?
Thank you so much, Neil. I'll try to see whether I can... Oh, they're opening up my presentation. Thank you, Tech. I guess you can go into presentation mode. Okay. And so, good morning again. We've started getting to know each other. So I hope you're looking forward to this kind of quite diverse set of contributions. My task this morning is to provide you with an overview of the approach of the UK government to digital development. And as usual, before we say the what we do and how we do it, it's always good to ask why we do it, even if this early in the morning. So why? Normally, when we reflect on these things, we try to organize them on 4 different levels. First of all, and apologies that maybe the text is a little bit small for reading, but I'll run through the key concepts for you. So first of all, we think about the fact that digital transformation is now widely recognized as an absolutely key enabler of social and economic development, even an accelerator of the SDGs, as many people like to say. And this has been further accelerated and amplified also by the upcoming technologies, and including AI that is already there with us. And then, of course, let me just see, enabling development. Yes, I can't read. My eyesight is very bad. So all of this can enable development at different levels, and but at the same time, there are problems that we need to solve. So the first one is the digital divide. We know that 2.6 billion people are still offline in the world, but we have other divides, plural, including on digital skills and access and accessibility of digital content and services. We also have specific things like the gender digital gaps, and many of you are very, very familiar with these issues. On top of the divides, we need to think about the risks. And as you all know, risks that have been developing and accelerating over time include, cybersecurity threats, online safety risks, but also those risks that, again, AI has amplified and is amplifying, like misinformation and disinformation. So these are the kind of 4 levels that sort of, in a way, justify why we want to work on digital development. But what is digital development for us? So the definition of digital development for FCDO is that we want to support our partner countries in achieving an inclusive, responsible, and sustainable digital transformation. It's quite a mouthful, so I'm going to unpack it for you by using our policy framework, which is here, very colorful. So digital development is quite a complex concept, and I know that different colleagues and stakeholders in the IGF and beyond define it in many different ways. We find this way of articulating our thinking quite useful, and we've developed this policy framework based on experience of various quite a few years of working with partner countries in trying to promote the use of digital technologies to advance development. So when we think about digital transformation, we are actually referring to digital transformation typically of the economy, as people think of spontaneously, but also very much of government and of society in the broad sense of the term. So it's a very broad approach to digital transformation. However, we don't want to, let's say, promote digital transformation just for the sake of it. We want it to be inclusive, responsible, and sustainable. So under the pillar of digital inclusion, we focus, of course, on the foundational block without which we cannot do anything, which is inclusive and sort of affordable and sustainable connectivity, especially connectivity at the last mile for the most underserved. But also within that same bucket of digital inclusion, we look at the situation of specifically underserved communities, of course, but also marginalized groups like women and girls and people living with disabilities. And we think about not just just how they can get connected, but also how they can access digital content and services that are relevant to them, and how they can develop and use digital skills at different levels so that digital connectivity becomes meaningful to them, productive, and really makes sense for their context. And then going on to sort of manage the risks is the bucket of digital responsibility, within which we include all our work. Of course, not just our work as the UK, but the work with all the partners and stakeholders that we collaborate all the time with. We focus on cybersecurity capacity building, cyber hygiene awareness, but also the promotion of online safety. We have also a very strong emphasis on technology-facilitated gender-based violence. That unfortunately is a phenomenon that has been growing over the past few years. And also the importance of data protection. And, again, with the advance of AI, data and the protection of data and the use of data and the transparency of it is becoming an even more critical issue. And last but not least, the digital sustainability. This is a pillar that we added to our framework a couple of years ago, so it's a bit more recent, like many other organizations around the world, started to think about, yes, digital transformation is really critical, is really important, it brings a lot of benefits. We can leverage it in a positive way to provide digital tools and platforms for solutions on climate change adaptation and resilience for local communities. However, there is also a clear environmental cost of digital transformation. Just think about the energy use, the critical minerals, the physical infrastructure, you name it. And again, with the advent of AI, this is amplifying again. Think about data centers, et cetera, et cetera. So let me just go to the next one. So hopefully that gives you an overview. But if you want to know more, and also if you want to see practical examples of how we've applied this over the years with evidence of the impact of this approach, and also a bit of the plan for the future, look at the digital development strategy, and that's the QR code to make it easier for you if you want. So I give you a second in case you want to take note of that. Wonderful. Okay. And then we go into last part of my presentation is on actually giving you a practical example of how we apply all of this thinking and sort of our policy and strategy approach. And I will focus only specifically on our, what we call our sort of quote unquote flagship program on digital access. The digital access program is a partnership between FCDO and DCIT, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. We work together across government to promote three pillars of work. The first one is on digital inclusion, pillar one, and it basically works at two levels. One is the level of the policies, sort of regulatory frameworks and standards that create that enabling environment, that system-wide change that can sort of support and enhance digital inclusion. But at the market and community level, we specifically focus on testing technology and business models that can enable, first of all, that kind of famous, inclusive, meaningful, affordable, sustainable connectivity at the last mile, but also all the other models that help with digital skills, access to content and services, etc. The second pillar is the kind of trust and resilience. So it kind of maybe makes you think back of what I explained as digital responsibility, with a lot of emphasis on cybersecurity capacity building, but also work on online safety and data protection. And last but not least, pillar three is about now taking all of this work, creating that sort of positive environment for the local digital economy and ecosystem, and specifically supporting those forms of tech entrepreneurship in the local digital economies of our 5 focal countries that you see listed at the top, Brazil, Indonesia, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, to basically facilitate and sort of stimulate digital innovations that are useful for local development challenges. And this also creates opportunities for, obviously, business partnerships and investment, collaborations across the border as well. Obviously, from those 5 countries, today we have with us, obviously, Kenya and South Africa represented extremely well. We work also in the other 3, and actually we are amplifying the work of the Digital Access Program ODAP to the regions by just sharing knowledge and just on a demand basis, disseminating the models that we demonstrated over the years. And I will just say to conclude that top-line results of the program have been so far that we've reached 15 million people over 5 countries in over 5,000 communities, all 555, it's quite easy to sort of remember, where we have sustainably improved the digital inclusion of people in these communities. But you could think that 15 million people actually in 2.6 2.6 billion people is just a drop in the ocean. What is important is not so much just the number of people that we reach in a sustainable way, but it's actually the models and the practices that we try to demonstrate with a multi-stakeholder approach, and how all of this gets embedded through a lot of sort of capacity building and technical assistance that really enables local organizations to then take forward, and local stakeholders to take forward that work. I should quote that delivery model is very flexible and agile, and I should say that we give huge priority to working with local organizations, but we also have a fantastic global partners. Of course, the ITU is on line with us, and you've heard from the other partners in Kenya and South Africa. You'll listen to them in a minute. We also work with the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance, the British Standards Institute, and the British Council on the various aspects of the program. So I will stop here, and I hope that this gives you enough of a framework of our thinking of digital development, and also the overview of the program. And now you will hear more specific presentations on some of the activities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alessandra. Really comprehensive overview of the UK approach there, and I'm sure plenty of material for some really rich discussion to follow. So turning now to Samantha O'Riordan from the ITU, I'll turn over to you for your opening remarks on how we can develop a secure and rights-respecting digital future. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, and good morning, everyone. I represent the International Telecommunications Union, ITU, which is the UN Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies. And this year, ITU is proud to turn 160 years old. But even since the beginning of the ITU, there have been concerns about trustworthy communication and about interference. Back in the day, it was interference of cable, but now things have moved on. Technology has progressed with the rise of new technologies such as AI and quantum computing. Cybersecurity has become foundational to digital development and should be part of every layer of technological advancement to ensure trust and resilience. It is important to note that as we progress in this digital age, that there are still, as Alessandra mentioned, 2.6 billion people who are offline. And of those people who are offline, the majority of them can still be found in Africa and Asia. So it is a disproportionate spread. And it's also just important to note that while we talk about coverage, and often we say that I think it's now between about 97% of the world is covered by a mobile network. There is also a usage gap. And there are many reasons why there is and still remains a usage gap. And this is often the primary, two of the primary reasons are down to affordability, but also a lack of digital skills, awareness, knowledge, maybe local content, and trust. It is important that people feel safe and secure online. That is why ITU has been part and supported the UN targets on meaningful connectivity for 2030, which state that it's important for those who have connectivity to have meaningful connectivity. And by meaningful connectivity, it means that users have access to a safe, satisfying, enriching, and productive online experience at an affordable cost. So in terms of ITU-D and what we do and how we support countries, we have been supporting countries with enabling policy and regulatory environments, helping them to create those through research, capacity building, and awareness raising. Also, we have been promoting inclusive and secure telecommunications for sustainable development. On the topic of cybersecurity, ITU has been at the forefront of capacity development for over 20 years through the WSIS Action Line C5 and World Telecommunications Development Conference in 2006. And even though it's been a decade of the Global Cybersecurity Index, you can see today that the the challenges persist in least developed countries and small island developing states, which are often more than 10 years behind other developing countries. So just to give you a few examples of how ITU is supporting countries to help ensure safer environments. So ITU has helped establish 24 computer incident response teams. Over the past 2 years, ITU has worked with 7 different countries to establish national cybersecurity strategies through training workshops, discussions in countries. Since 2022, ITU has worked with over 50 partners in 30 countries to train over 170,000 children, 2,500 parents and educators, and over 1,000 governments and stakeholders on child online protection. And it's not just about keeping children safe online. It's also thinking as well about the experience of women and supporting women online with initiatives such as Women in Cyber and her Cyber Tracks, making sure that women are also trained and able to connect safely. Lastly, just to mention that in May, ITU organized a global cyber drill in Dubai with over 136 countries participating. As Alessandra mentioned, we have been working with FCDO, in particular the Digital Access Program, to promote effective regulation, greater investment, and innovative models for connectivity in underserved communities in 5 countries, which are Brazil, Indonesia, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. So the work has included policy guidance and recommendations for regulators, research into last mile and alternative access solutions, and digital inclusion research and training. Examples of the work that we have been doing include collaborative regulation studies in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, development of universal service financing efficiency toolkit and training, and digital assessments. Digital skills assessments conducted in Kenya and Nigeria. So we have been supportive of making sure that whilst when connectivity reaches those underserved communities, they still have a safe online experience. Finally, I just wanted to mention that with the upcoming World Telecommunications Development Conference this November in Baku, Azerbaijan, ITU will continue to deepen our commitment to leaving no one behind and ensuring meaningful connectivity, ensuring that populations have the relevant skills, countries have the tools and partnerships needed to ensure that their populations thrive securely in the digital age. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Much appreciated. And really interesting there to hear about all the work that the ITU is doing, not just on improving connectivity, but meaningful connectivity, of course. And I know this is, the topic of kind of innovation as well as connectivity is of keen interest to our next speaker, Leonard Mabele. So, Leonard, I will pass now to you for your opening remarks.
Yeah, once again, thank you very much, Neil, and great to be here again. I'm just going to share a small slide I have here. Yeah, Neil, I can see on my screen. Just let me know if it's all clear in the room.
Yep, we can see that in the room. Thank you.
Perfect. So just building on to what Alessandra was mentioning earlier about digital access initiatives, I'm just going to present a glimpse of what's going on in Kenya, what sort of activities are happening in Kenya, and pretty much from what some of the government initiatives looking at digital access across the country and some form of collaborations within the region, as well as the projects that we are working on or have already worked on under the Digital Access Initiative program by FCDO. So from 2018 to 2021, the government, of course, working together, led by the Communications Authority of Kenya, developed the National Broadband Strategy that pretty much saw a growth and a bit of multi-stakeholder participation in delivering access and connectivity to different sort of stakeholders, in this case to schools, to rural locations, etc. But still, while significant results were achieved out of it, there were still some challenges realized, and in this case was delivering last mile access requires a more like a holistic approach to things, which in this case includes digital skills, includes devices, a focus on power. So that national broadband strategy, having lived its time until 2021, the government enacted a new plan through the Ministry of Digital Economy. The new plan is the Kenya National Digital Master Plan, the one I'm just presenting right now. And in this case, it became a bit more specific or laid out different pillars that would be able to address some of the things that had been identified from the previous national broadband strategy. So key to this master plan and going until 2032, having now, what Alessandro is presenting, the first and fundamental pillar to the work is the digital infrastructure. So while cellular infrastructure has covered predominantly about 90% of the country, and in this case on 4G, there is a need to still look at affordable access and maybe borrowing some of the words from Samantha, making sure that the affordable access is also meaningful in some of the places that are still very much underserved. And in this case, most of them are in the rural areas. So if you're looking at the Kenyan map, and which was on my first slide, we do have counties as larger as the size of Netherlands, and some of them are larger as, kind of combine two countries in Europe. And with that kind of geography, different models are needed, and also different approaches to reaching the last mile are required. And that forms a very key strategic pillar for the ICT, for the Ministry of ICT. And so digital infrastructure is really key, and looking at how that can look at also innovative ways that enables access, meaningful access to the last mile. And then while looking at that and fleshing out from the previous national broadband strategies, also the focus on digital skills. So in this case, ensuring that the underserved population see value in what connectivity means. And in this case, underserved might include the rural youths, also includes a significant fraction of women in the rural communities that may not see the value or do not have yet the understanding of the opportunity that ICT presents to them. So that's a very key pillar that the Ministry of Digital Economy has also put in a lot of weight to ensure some key objectives are achieved there. And then while looking at that, of course, infrastructure being a window or an opportunity to unlock more entrepreneurship activities and enable more developments on the Industry 4.0 opportunities such as Internet of Things. We are all familiar with the conversations on AI now. So digital innovation is also one of the key pillars that the Ministry of Digital Economy has also fleshed out to be able to see a lot of work happen, not only in the urban and suburban areas, but as well as the rural communities. In this case, just remembering that if you're in Kenya, you'll find a lot of digital hubs within the cities, and there's so little of that in the rural areas. So hence this sort of pillar, trying to see how we create that how do we bridge that digital divide, particularly while looking at the aspect of digital innovation. And of course, while some of the government services have come online, and Kenya has been really active on that within the region, there's still some that are not online, and they still also are a significant fraction of the people. In this case, again, underrepresented groups and rural communities made up of women that are not having access to the digital government services. So again, the Ministry of Digital Economy has created this as a separate pillar to have new services that are meant to reach as many people as possible, becoming digital and accessible. And at the same time, the ones that are available being made to reach the underrepresented groups. Now, building on to this, I'm just moving to my next slide, which in this case speaks onto the work that is contributing to what these pillars or these strategies the government has already put out there. And one of the developments that we have ongoing, and we pretty much had it from way back in 2020 when the Communications Authority developed the framework for TV white spaces, has been the work on spectrum sharing. So beyond the legacy models of delivering access to rural areas and legacy models that deliver connectivity, particularly through cellular connectivity or delivering fiber infrastructure. There's been the need of looking at the to deliver this last mile access and also enable innovation. So, of course, with TV White Spaces forming as a foundation, one chunks of work we've developed over time after that has been the immense collaboration that has been going on and still going on with the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance and FCDO alongside Communications Authority and other stakeholders to look at what other opportunities of spectrum sharing can be considered or can be looked into to enhance capacity for internet access and, of course, at the same time, enhance access to the internet. So one of that has been the work on Wi-Fi 6E, or the work in the 6 gigahertz band, and in 2022-2023, led by Strathmore University. Of course, with DSA, we worked on the coexistence studies for Wi-Fi, and in this case, helped develop what has become like a guideline on the lower band of the 6 gigahertz band that the Communications Authority published to look at ways of enhancing Wi-Fi capacity. Of course, some of the conversations happening now is to be able to see how the upper part can be, again, be adopted or reused to be able to enable more access to Wi-Fi or more capacity for Wi-Fi. During the study on the coexistence work, we did not focus on the lower part only. Unfortunately, we looked at the whole band, which the Communications Authority at this point is just evaluating how that can be extended. And beyond that, of course, what we've been able to work on between 2023 and last year was the work to see an opportunity or evaluate an opportunity of having non-public networks deployed in places that are underserved. And in this case, support last mile internet access, particularly maybe through private LTE or private 5G networks, have community networks deploy them in places that are underserved. And that's part of the new initiatives of pretty much combining enabling affordable access and supporting last mile internet access. And of course, at the tail end of this development is to have new policies come out that are able to support the commercial rollouts of this sort of networks and more sustainable models that these infrastructures can deliver to reach community places that are underserved, but at the same time enable places that are open or ripe for more innovation. And from what I've just mentioned, we had the communications of Wi-Fi 6E, and of course, there's been developments that have been are now in pipeline to be able to see what sort of framework can be developed to support the non-public networks. And of course, beyond this, we also realize that when we talk about these conversations, there's of course the lack of capacity, particularly to some of the internet service providers that can leverage this opportunity to support the government in delivering this sort of services or in delivering this affordable and meaningful connectivity, access alternatives. And with that, we embarked on working on different digital skills programs, which are running within different multi-stakeholders. Of course, FCDO has worked with Kictanet, has worked with Visca, has presently working with Afralti on various other initiatives. And even at the moment, of course, there's work going on led by DSA with Strathmore University to be able to have like a dynamic spectrum access certification program that can enable now the internet service providers understand the opportunity of spectrum sharing and the approaches that they will probably go forth to collaborate with other stakeholders to deliver this sort of models of infrastructure to support last mile networks. And beyond that, there's also the aspect of just having the understanding of the different topics, particularly on cybersecurity. Of course, as we push for the access to the underserved, we also understand the vulnerability that comes with it, just as Samantha was saying earlier. And of course, we are keen that cybersecurity skills are developed. And also with the aspects of data protection are made to be understood by the state agencies as well as the private sector. And a plethora of other digital skills programs that are presently running in the country. Of course, we do have right now a fiber program that has been developed to be able to have community networks understand that they could also deploy their networks through fiber infrastructure, among other digital skills programs that are going on now. So I'm going to stop there, Niels, and hand back to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Leonard. Really interesting to see how this is playing out in your context there. So I'll turn over now to Professor Luzango. Professor Luzango, please take it away with your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you now, and the panelists. So my colleagues have already touched some of the aspects of topics I would like to cover, but to emphasize more on the need of broadband connectivity for development of any nation. So here in South Africa, of course, just to give you an overview, in the last 10 years, the government has made quite a good, achieved quite a good success in terms of digital transformation, particularly in connectivity. For example, we are talking about almost 78% of the population has some form of internet connectivity. However, most of the population are connected via mobile networks. Of course, the picture is similar to my colleagues in Kenya. And only around 14.5% of the population is connected via fixed internet at home. Of course, we do have a National Development Plan 2030, which calls for universal access for everyone, as we are aware that broadband connectivity can contribute quite a good percentage of GDP in developing countries. And there are some initiatives, for example, the fourth industrial revolution, and others are talking about the fifth. But how can a nation achieve that if there is no affordable or ubiquitous access to the broadband? If you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, over half of those actually requires digital access, broadband access to be achieved by any country. So the fear is that if we proceed this way, where only a few, the few in the urban areas, for example, are just connected, and the majority of people in rural areas are not connected, we might not achieve the UN SDGs. To give you more details, I would like to give you an analogy of affordability of data here in South Africa vis-a-vis the daily household food basket cost. Of course, the cost of data, of 1 gigabit of data, has gone down from around 89 Rand per gigabyte to around 33 Rand, which is around 1.8 US dollars. However, if you compare that to the average household affordability of food, this is around 10% of that. So a household, a rural household owner will have to debate whether they should buy data or put bread on the table and also afford other things. So this has always been a challenge. How can one reduce the cost of connectivity? And this is the focus of the research that we are doing at CSAR, trying to reduce the cost of connectivity. So to give you an idea of what we've been working in the past 10 years, we've been trying to develop technologies and solutions that will allow rural communities to connect to the broadband affordably. And some of the initiatives in the area of reducing the cost of accessing spectrum, because we are aware that spectrum contribute immensely in the total cost of ownership for any operator, particularly the wireless operators like mobile networks. So one of the solutions that we're looking at is through the innovative use of spectrum by dynamically sharing it. And In the past 10 years, for example, we worked with the regulator, ICASA here, to come up with the regulations that will allow operators, big and small, to access spectrum in the broadcasting band, the so-called TV space. And by 2018, in March, that was achieved. The regulator here published the regulations on the use of TV space. And of course, communities start to utilize it to provide affordable connectivity in the rural areas. Going forward, we are now in phase 2 of that initiative, which is allowing secondary use of other parts of spectrum outside of the broadcasting band. And we are currently working with the regulator on the so-called innovation spectrum. This is the spectrum around 3.8 gigahertz to 4.2, as well as lower 6 gigahertz, the so-called Wi-Fi 6. So in this regard, we've been working very closely with the FCDO, firstly, in enabling the ICT-focused SMMEs owned by women, youth, and persons with disability in taking advantage of this spectrum, which is now available in the TV band, and as well as the one that we are busy working into to get the regulations in motion. Since around 2020, the FCDO and CSR have collaborated in supporting around 13 small, medium enterprises focused SMMEs in deploying affordable connectivity in rural areas. Around 5 provinces have been reached through this program, and over 70,000 users in rural areas are connected to this initiative daily. Over 200 public facilities have been connected through those initiatives. Over 213 jobs have been created. Over 150 small businesses have been connected. So to sum it up, it has been a success. And of course, making sure that it is sustainable. FCDO, CSR, and other partners have been providing capacity building to these beneficiary SMMEs in terms of technical and business models, so that they can be sustainable beyond the support that we're providing to them. Maybe I should stop here. Thank you now.
Thank you very much, Professor. Really interesting there, and I think already, you know, across this conversation, if you'll excuse the pun, we're really running the full spectrum of, you know, all the way from local regulatory sort of frameworks and environments, all the way up to the global normative initiatives, which I think also kind of leads us on quite nicely to our next panelist. Maria, who's going to be representing the civil society voice on this, and will hopefully be able to provide a bit more flavour on these topics, particularly from the kind of from that sort of normative angle, and in terms of our rights respecting approach to these issues. So, Maria, please.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you for all the presentation. As Neil just mentioned it, the idea of my intervention is try to complement a little bit a different angle of what you already have heard. We have heard a lot in the previous presentation around how to ensure connectivity in a sustainable way and a meaningful way, but a complement of what it means, what also was in the pillars presented initially by Alessandra, of like having inclusive and responsible, sustainable digital transformation transformation strategies look into the aspect of like what means unpacking, having effective and inclusive participation of different stakeholders at the local level, involved from the very beginning in the design and the deployment of these different strategies. And this is something that had been part of the core work of the Global Partners Digital organization. Across the years, we have been working with partners in different regions around the world and trying to support them to unpack in their own work at the local level and working in collaboration with local authorities in setting kind of the elements of what it means and what are the benefits of having participatory process of design and implementation, deployment of digital strategies. So applied particularly to the context of connectivity. Also, I think Samantha was referring to these uses gaps. Many times when we start with the deployment of these digital transformation strategies or the implementation of this project, we focus very heavily in the first part, which is like ensuring that the population can be effectively connected, have broadband access to the devices, and increasingly we think also in digital skills, as we have heard in many of the program, are essential part of the implementation. But then there is an additional layer when we increase the sophistication and we provide tools to the local actor to engage meaningfully with these policies. So one element that I would like to see more in the future, probably for revisions of the strategy, is like where it sits, like the more participatory angle that can be a little bit part of the inclusive approach, but also it's part of the responsible approach, because we only know what we know, we don't know what we don't know. So the only way in being effective in responding to the needs of the local communities and the local realities and the context is to have by design the digital transformation policies being produced and discussed at the local level with the relevant actors, with the traditionally marginalized communities also, because we need to go beyond the top-down approach of like seeing that we are providing certain technologies and certain skills to certain populations, but we need to learn what are their needs, what are their ways in which they start to engage, and how technology start to transform the social life at the community level. And all those elements should be taken in account on when we are talking about digital transformation that is really conscious and rights respecting for the exercise of the best measure for human development. And the final angle that I would like to include on that, because maybe probably after we will not have much time for discussion, is like what is the relevance of the connection between the local developments and the global guidance. I have seen in the work of Global Partners Digital that many groups at the local level struggle to show their local governments, the local policymakers, the benefit of like looking into digital transformation policy with this human rights angle approach, and also even, for example, in the engagement of companies that look at the many of the developing countries that are engaging in digital transformation strategies as markets, but not necessarily are willing to offer the same level of protection that are offered in other places and in other jurisdictions. So I think that there is an inherent benefit in keeping an eye in what is the global development in terms of governance of the technologies with a human rights approach. There is a lot of work that is being conducted by the UN bodies, providing guidance in the implementation of many of specific technologies in different fields, in cybersecurity, in artificial intelligence governance, in platform governance, and all that should be part also of the interaction and feeding the local perspective in terms of how to design meaningful, responsible, and sustainable digital transformation at the local level. We try to be good partners, as our name says, Global Partners Digital, in trying to bring that to the different groups working on the ground. So if you want to have more access to information, I encourage you to visit our website, and there are many materials, and happy to be in contact for anyone that can benefit of some of the projects that we have implemented in that sense. I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you so much, Maria. Really appreciate it. So we have just a little bit of time left now for questions. So if anyone here in the audience would like to ask a question, please do go up to one of the microphones on either side of the stage. And all I'd ask is when you do, please state your name and any organizational affiliation you're with. And if you'd like to address your question to any of the panelists. We also, of course, have online participation. This is a hybrid session, and I believe there's a Mentimeter attached to that. So I'm just going to double check the chat and see if there's any questions. If there are none in the room, or indeed online, then I am more than happy to ask a question to the panel here. I think we've really covered quite a kind of broad spectrum of issues here, and running the full gamut of digital development. And it's really clear, I think, as a kind of recurring theme from the conversation that we've had, is the need to not just ensure connectivity, but meaningful connectivity, and ensuring that it's not just technology for the sake of technology, but ensuring it's actually rights respecting. And of course, part of that is that we are hearing a great deal about the kind of risks and issues that are created, obviously, with the adoption of new technologies. So I suppose as a bit of an open question to the panel, and I welcome perspectives from anyone, but be really interested to hear a bit more on this balance between kind of innovation and increasing connectivity. So increasing connectivity and balancing that with the need to prevent new harms, such as Alessandra, you mentioned, tech-facilitated gender-based violence, cybercrime, disinformation have kind of all appeared. I'd welcome any thoughts from that on the panel as we rapidly approach the end.
Shall I jump in? Shall I break the ice? Before I jump back into the risks, allow me to stress one point, because there's been a theme through the conversations and presentations of this morning, which is the approach of community networks to increase not just affordable and inclusive, but also meaningful connectivity. And I just wanted to stress that we work with the Association for Progressive Communication to actually deepen that approach. And that is an approach actually that, because it's community-based, it really starts from as Maria indicated very importantly, on avoiding the risk, because this is also a risk of exclusion, of being very top-down in the way we propose technological solutions, and actually hearing, first of all, from the community what are their needs, but also their potential and their ambitions. And I think the APC has been done a fantastic job as a global partner across the 5 countries of the DAP, but also beyond. They're a global partner, so I encourage anybody who is interested in community networks approaches to approach APC and get more information there. We did a great session with them yesterday as well, and there's a new publication also that we've launched. So after this plug on community networks, because it's one of my passions, going back to the risks part, maybe I'll just focus on TFGBV, because I would just want to give space to the others. So we've done a lot of work on not just promoting approaches to online safety, to promoting online safety, which always has to go both at the level of regulatory frameworks, but also the capability of the users themselves. So it's also we always build into digital skills development trainings, always cyber hygiene awareness and online safety sort of tools and sort of skills. But at the same time, when you go specifically into technology-facilitated gender-based violence, the theme becomes more complex. And so we've done additional research to try and really understand the drivers, so where that comes from, and what can we do also to kind of prevent that dynamic rather than only deal with, try to support the sort of survivors, so to say, to deal with the consequences. I'll stop there, but just to say that if anybody wants to know more on that approach on preventing TFGBV, we also have a global partnership of the UK with different countries around the world on this. Please come and talk to me or other FCDO colleagues, and we can tell you more on that. I'll just stop on that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alessandra. We have just a few minutes left in case anyone has any questions, so please do feel free to approach the microphones if so.
I can jump in also with that.
Maria.
Yeah. Just a compliment also from my previous remark, I think that one essential element in terms of like ensuring this human rights approach that I am advocating for and address in an effective manner the potential risk or the harms that come from some of these very relevant development, but we need to acknowledge that they all have like a negative sides also, as well as they bring a lot of potentiality for improving human life. They bring new risk and new challenges. It's precisely enhancing at the same time that we're enhancing the access to the technology and the ability of the people to meaningfully interact with technology, enhancing the other structure, the institutional structure, the normative structure that will allow particularly to be able to track in an effective manner what is the impact that the deployment of technology is having on the ground. So usually when we focus in providing meaningful connectivity and more meaningful access more largely to technologies, we focus much more in the shiny object than in the potentiality of the negative impact that the shiny object can have. So what we advocate with a human rights approach is that we do both. Those are not some elements that are contradictory or a zero-sum game. We can do both at the same time, and they have like a great benefit in terms of like reinforcement, legitimacy, and ensuring that it's not mission creep in terms of the original intention of the digital transformation policies that we are implementing. Because usually, I mean, I totally, truly believe that there are good intentions behind the deployment of the technology always, but there are a lot of unknown, and the unknown are not only coming from the nature of the technology itself, they come from the specific interaction that happen between specific technologies and local contexts and realities and cultural and social elements that are different from one place to another. So that is why like monitoring constantly how this is unpacking and being able to have mechanism in place to course correct, to have oversight and review and repeat in the cycle of policy designing are fundamental for ensuring a human rights respective approach in the digital future.
Thank you, Maria. I'm afraid I can't see our online participants on the screen I have in front of me, so please do just chime in if you have anything to add.
Yeah, they could just jump in, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Yeah, I just probably wanted to share a bit of a little perspective. I see we only have a minute, so I had to keep it low. Sure. So I recently just came from, actually yesterday, I came from the Busia County, which is a county to the western part of Kenya in neighboring Uganda. And moving around that county, probably I found it to be the most underserved in terms of cellular access in the country since I've been moving around. It has, going by the words of the Alliance for Affordable Internet Access and ITU's definition of meaningful internet access, the best connection you will get in most of the places as you go deeper is 3G. And many other places I had edge, 2G. And more, that's something I found baffling was just how many schools are next to each other in such regions. And when I started thinking about it, I realized just the population reported by the National Bureau of Statistics of that county, somehow practically it's not correct. It makes me doubt if we really have the right figure of the global population as 8 billion, or there are more people that we're not really counting as we think about this stuff. So looking at the intersection of connectivity and innovation, something that struck my mind was we have an avenue to have community networks really function to deliver meaningful and affordable access in the rural areas. But beyond that, because of the conversations we were having with farmers, it was very interesting to note that they also need digital solutions. So I'm looking at the intersection of connectivity brought on by community networks and maybe community networks supporting also innovation to support those sort of sectors in some of the underserved areas. Sorry, I get into extra time, but
Not at all. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And yes, indeed, unfortunately, we are not only out of time, but slightly over time. So we're going to have to wrap up there. But I think all that remains to say is thank you so much to our panelists, both here in the room and those online, all our participants here in the room and online. There will be a summary report of this session produced and published, I believe, to the IGF website. So please do keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of our panelists here in saying we'd be very happy to continue the conversation afterwards. So thank you again, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, and you're welcome to this session, Judging in the Digital Age, Cybersecurity and Digital Evidence. And we are on channel 5. If you would take your equipment and turn it on, put on channel 5. Today we have a number of speakers from various jurisdictions in terms of our IGF, segments. And can I have the slide, please? Thank you. My name is Dr. Naza Nicholas Kirama from Tanzania. I work with Internet Society Tanzania chapter, and I also doubles up as the coordinator for the Tanzania Internet Governance Forum. And today we are going to have a very good session on judging in the digital age, cybersecurity, and digital evidence. And why are we here? We are here because courts globally are now digital ecosystems, and evidence records and even hearings actually exist online. Digital evidence is central to modern cases, mobile data, emails, metadata, surveillance footage, blockchain logs, AI-generated content. We have things like cyber attacks on court infrastructure that can threaten the integrity, data integrity and access to justice. In that case, we are talking about that judges must navigate evolving tech, complex data, and across border legal dilemmas. We are also working very tirelessly since 2023, 2022, to bring the judiciary, especially judges, to the internet governance space. And it started in 2023 in Japan. We had a session called Judges on Digital Rights Online. And the goal is to break the silos, to link judiciary with the cybersecurity experts, technologists, and policymakers, and not forgetting the regular internet users. This session builds on the momentum by creating a permanent platform for dialogue and exchange. We are not just talking tech, we are reshaping the judicial culture for the digital age. The digital evidence and cyber threats, you will find that there are so many things that are at stake. For example, the admissibility and authenticity. How do we verify tamper-prone digital files across different legal systems? That is question number one. The issue of chain of custody. What are the standards to ensure digital evidence will remain untainted? That is question number two. Cybersecurity in courts, from ransomware to data breaches. How do we protect institutions? That is question number three. AI and justice. Can we trust machines, machine learning in evidence analysis or sentencing? Question number four. Training gaps. Judges need continuous specialized training to keep up with emerging tech and things like AI. The next slide is about our vision. We need to continue to be resilient, digitally literate, to have those in the judicial system. We need to build legal harmonization across jurisdictions to handle digital evidence uniformly. Share best practices from diverse legal systems, civil, common, and hybrid traditions, and also develop capacity building programs, cyber law, data protection, digital forensic, and AI literacy. Also, we foster collaboration between judiciary, civil society, tech developers, and also empower courts not just to catch up, but lead in shaping responsible digital justice. With that introduction, now I take this whole burden to the Honorable Dr. Eliamani Laltaika from the High Court of Tanzania. And the issue of the whole of this that I've been able to talk about. Honorable Eliamani, as a sitting judge of High Court in Tanzania, how are your courts currently addressing challenges related to admissibility of digital evidence, especially when such evidence originates from outside your jurisdiction or lacks clear standard for authentication?
Thank you very much, Dr. Naza. First and foremost, my appreciation to the IGF Secretariat for their willingness and the continuous support to engage the judiciary in this very important part of the 21st century legal process. Before I answer your question, Dr. Nazar, I would like to kind of unpack some of these concepts. And from a legal point of view, cybersecurity, these are processes, legal, policy, economic, social, and even diplomatic processes to keep the cyberspace safe for all users, including children, people with disability, and across regions. So that is the whole concept of cybersecurity, is to ensure that the cyberspace is safe for all of us to use. And digital evidence, also known as electronic evidence, this is now the information with probative value presented to a court for a judge to consider in making a decision whether something has happened or has not. And digital evidence or electronic evidence is a newcomer in the development of law and the judiciaries all over the world. It started in the late 70s in the US. Before that, only hard copies were used to prove something that has happened or not. When courts consider whether to admit evidence or not, there are usually 5 considerations. And this doesn't really distinguish whether that piece of evidence is from one's jurisdiction or it's from some other country. Number 1, relevance. I would ask counsel who is addressing me, or I will use my own conviction to judge whether a certain piece of evidence is relevant to the case I'm addressing. If it doesn't, it's not relevant, however impressive it is. Number 2, authenticity. The evidence must be shown to be what it purports to be. If you are telling me this is a video of someone stabbing a knife on some innocent passerby, I should be able to know that that is actually what is being done. It's not a cartoon that has been curated. Number 3, integrity of the system. I should be able to verify the system from which that video was extracted, or that piece of paper or that email was printed out. Number 4, chain of custody. I should know who took care of that piece of evidence. How many hands did it change through before it came to my court? And finally, and this is a little bit technical, I would check whether it complies with the statutory requirements of the Evidence Act of my own country. Every country has its own legal system, has its own precedent, has its own way of judging evidence. So if a piece of evidence passes that process, then there is no discrimination really whether it is from my jurisdiction or not. And I would only say that people thought these are only things from the movie, but I can say that these are actual things that are happening, and each one of you is currently creating digital evidence or electronic evidence from the pictures you are taking, from your geolocation, from the voices you are sending over WhatsApp. Everything, the meta tags can be used to authenticate that so-and-so was in Norway on this date, and this is what he did. Everything you are doing, from shopping online to walking into a casino, that is actually building some sort of a digital evidence ecosystem. What does this mean in practice? It means cybersecurity law is much, much, much beyond what many people consider criminal. Law, as I said last year, 2 years ago in Japan, is not only about punishing people. There are so many roles of the law, and I will conclude by this, that law can play a punitive role. So and so has done something wrong and must be punished. Law can play a facilitative role. Law can just facilitate you to acquire your digital assets. No one is punishing you. You just qualify to get some rights, and the law is there to say, yes, give this person a license, or clear this person from whatever defamation that does. And the third is the third role of the law is to kind of enable cooperation with other authorities. The law is there to ensure that there are bridges. When you want to consult a certain government entity, there are legal procedures that must be followed. And if they refuse to do something, you can still come to court and say, I want you to issue an order to command the police officers to give me a clearance for me to be able to travel. The judge will say, I want to command you to do your statutory function of enabling this person to do what they want. So we want people to have this broader look at law rather than just thinking a judge and a police officer is there to wait for you to be punished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Judge. And I have a request of you to make. If you could issue an order right now for every speaker to stay within 5 minutes of his submission, I think I will appreciate that. Now I move to Professor Peter Swear, who is online. And I wanted to make sure, are you available, Professor? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. If you can spend 1 minute to introduce yourself and the background.
Yes. Okay, and I don't know if the video is working. Maybe it doesn't work. Oh, there it goes. Okay, hello, I'm in Spain today. My name is Peter Swire. I'm a professor at Georgia Tech. My background is a law professor, but I teach in the College of Computing, so I work on these issues. I also work on these issues as the leader of the Cross-Border Data Forum, where we do a lot of research on issues of data going across borders, especially law enforcement access. So that's a little bit of my background. Is there a specific question you'd like me to address?
Yes. The question I have for you, Professor, is what are the key principles or methodologies that judges and lawyers must understand to critically assess the reliability and chain of custody for digital evidence, especially when it is presented through automated or AI-generated tools? You have 5 minutes.
Yes, and I'll try to stay within the time. So first of all, thank you for including me here today. I'm teaching in Spain this summer, and I feel honored to get to participate in this panel. I will turn to your question with just a little bit of background first, because we have resources at the Cross-Border Data Forum that talks about issues of government access to data across borders, such as the Budapest Convention and how to compare it to the new UN Cybercrime Convention. So we have a very recent study on the Cross-Border Data Forum about this. We've also written about how regional conventions, such as in Africa, might be useful for having governments get access to law enforcement requests that exist in other countries, because without that access, the United States has a blocking statute, and it's hard to get the content of email communications for the judges. So with that as background, what I would like to emphasize 3 areas where the digital evidence issues are different. But first, I'll tell you how much the digital issues are the same. So listening to our distinguished judge just now, his principles for evidence, including relevance and dependability, are the principles of evidence that existed before the internet happened in a very large extent. And so each country has its own you've always faced the problem that maybe this piece of paper has a fake signature on it. Now it might be a fake document electronically, but it's been the same problem for judges since forever about whether to believe the evidence that comes into court. So for the three things I'd emphasize, the first is authentication. Somebody might say that they are writing from a police agency or a prosecutor's office, but in fact, they're faking it. They might be from some other place. And so, and this was mentioned by the judge. And so the first thing to trust in evidence is that you're dealing with the right party, that it's the right person sending you the data. And in a world now where passwords can be broken many times, the standard good technology is to have what's called two-factor authentication. And many of you have used this where you log in with a password, then they send you a code and you send the code. And that's much harder to fake than simply a password-based system. So that's the first thing, some confidence you're dealing with the right people for authentication. The second question is chain of custody and whether you believe the document that came from Alice is the same document that's received by Bob. And we have well-established procedures, what are called digital signatures. And the basic idea is Alice sends a document and they do a mathematical operation on it called a hash. And it's a unique number that emerges on the far end. And if even one sentence or one word in the document is changed, the hash of the document changes. And so these digital signatures are a mechanism to prove what left from Alice is the same thing received by Bob, such as the court system. And so systems of digital signatures are very important. The third question that's come up more recently is what about AI? And we know that AI can have hallucinations. We've seen law cases in the United States where a lawyer just put in a question to the AI system and got back case citations that were not true. They made them up because AI and large language models use predictive technology, not definite technology, when they are trying to send evidence. And so when you receive a set of documents that have been generated by AI or might have been generated by AI, should you believe all the citations? And there's no perfect answer to this, but one answer to this is to double check the citations. Maybe if you have time, you double check all of the citations, you go to the link in the page and make sure it says what they say it says. And that's something when I worked with a judge as a clerk, we did already. We checked to make sure the lawyers were giving us a proper citation. But if there's too many citations to check in this way, maybe you do a sample. Maybe you try 10 or you try 50 or whatever the number is and start to see whether you have any fake citations come in. So I think what I'm emphasizing for today is in many ways, the problems are the same judges have had since forever, but we have to be sure about authentication. Is this really the person? We have to have some assurances on chain of custody and authenticity, and that's digital signatures. And we have to worry about hallucinations in AI. And that means checking the sources because otherwise it might be a fake citation that you don't trust. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Now we have learned that there is a predictive and definitive citations and all that. And that is why we are bringing the whole court system into the IGF. I want to now go to Dr. Jacqueline, who is here with us. And Dr. Jacqueline, if you would spend the next 1 minute to introduce yourself, and then I will do a question for you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jacqueline Pigato. I'm with Data Privacy Brazil, a Brazilian NGO working with digital rights in Brazil and also in the Global South. It's a pleasure to be here. Although I'm not a lawyer, I'll try my best to address your question.
Thank you so much, because we are a multi-stakeholder-driven body of the United Nations, the IGF. Now, I received the order from the judge for every speaker to stay within 5 minutes. Thank you, Professor Swear, for staying within 5 minutes. It was actually around 3.43 minutes. Now, Dr. Jacqueline, with the rise of things like spyware, the state surveillance tools being used in the name of national security, how should the judiciary respond when such technologies are used together with evidence? What role do courts play in safeguarding rights while navigating cases where surveillance methods themselves may be legally or ethically contested?
Thank you. I think I'm gonna first bring the concept of spyware for those who are not familiar with. But I think most of us know by now that spyware refers to surveillance technologies used to secretly extract data from personal devices and networks, often without the user's knowledge and with minimal legal oversight. So while presented as legitimate tools in the context of national security or law enforcement, these tools are increasingly being used in ways that erode democratic institutions and legal protections. So their undetectable nature means that violations often occur in the shadows, beyond the reach of public scrutiny or legal remedy. And as highlighted by one of our projects in Data Privacy Brazil, the Digital Defense Initiative, spyware not only violates privacy, it undermines judicial integrity, due process, and the separation of powers. So in Brazil, we have the ABIN Paralela case that I think exemplifies this threat. First Mile, a spyware tool, was deployed by intelligence officials to surveil targets that ranged from activists to Supreme Court justices themselves. So it is a paradigmatic case that stresses the most salient features of this type of surveillance. But it's only one example in a broader context of lack of oversight. This incident reveals a structural problem. When surveillance happens outside transparent legal frameworks, courts are sidelined and unable to guarantee fundamental rights they are tasked to protect. And in the Brazilian context of use of spyware by the state, there is a Supreme Court case pending in which the regulatory gap that allows for the current state of things is being challenged as unconstitutional. In this case, we argued that the use of different spyware for surveillance by the state should be ruled unconstitutional, since even in possible legitimate context of criminal persecution and law enforcement, the nature of how they work and their affordances move way beyond traditional investigative methods, such as telephonic interceptions, taking advantage of vulnerabilities found in other platforms and networks, and resulting in a level of intrusion that is difficult to justify under democratic parameters. However, even if the entire system is not ruled unconstitutional, we are requesting that strict criteria be established for the use of spyware, analogous to the existing regulations for other cases of breach of confidentiality, particularly the requirements of prior judicial authorization and adherence to similar strictness as in other situations of confidentiality breach, the constitutional interpretation of communication confidentiality updated to contemporary standards of intrusiveness, the inclusion of mechanisms to respect the chain of custody, the individualization of subjects subjected to intrusion procedures, and the development of other parameters compatible with the constitutional order. So I'll stop here now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. That was very informative, and I'm very glad that you could do this submission. Now I go to Advocate Umar Khan from Pakistan. If you can introduce yourself first.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nazar. Thank you so much, IGF, and the new trek into this IGF somehow, following from the last two IGF. This is Umar Khan from Pakistan. I'm basically a high court lawyer and working on the digital rights, dealing cyber cases in Pakistan, which is a bit new thing in Pakistan. Onward, we are having our first national law from 2016, Prevention of Electronics Crime Act. So this is from my side. Yeah, Dr. Nazar.
Thank you so much, Umar Khan, advocate of the High Court in Pakistan. given that you have a vast experience as a digital rights and defense lawyer, how do you see the balance between state surveillance for cybersecurity and the individual's right to fair trial, particularly when digital forensics are used to prosecute cybercrime?
Yeah, very important question. And I think there are two questions within one question: digital forensics and digital surveillance. Basically, to execute, to prosecute a digital crime or a cyber crime, it is very much important. Digital surveillance is the same as the government or the state is looking after the general public. So in the digital world, when the world is become a globe, on just one click, there are certain issues related to the people, general masses, are also arising at the same time. So I believe that surveillance is a key. Without that, you cannot go with the internet. Everybody will be doing their own job. Everybody can do a crime. So surveillance is just to monitor, track, and collect data. But the main thing is the key, the balance, that how they keep the balance, look into to the principle of legality, professionality, and with that, the transparency. That if the surveillance they're doing, the state agencies are doing, whether it is protecting the rights of the people, along with that, is this not violating the right to privacy, right to dignity, which are the constitutional rights given to the humans, to the citizens by the law, by the constitution, or by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I believe that surveillance, data collection, and all these things are important, but how the data collected from the end user are protected, because we have seen in the world that on the state level, the data of the user have been shared. So I believe that this is very important. The second one, the important thing is the digital evidence forensic. So by the end of the day, if a crime has been committed, it is the evidence that has to prove whether the crime has committed or not. The way the professor and the honorable judge has mentioned, that the chain of the custody, the evidence that reach the court, that is very much important. And without forensic, it is not possible to prove whether it is to be proved in the way that the evidence that has been collected is according to the law, is it following the SOPs, whether the forensic, the legality of the evidence. So I believe that whenever it is happening, you are prosecuting a crime, you are collecting evidence, it has to follow the standard of a digital forensic in a way that it has been proved. Because forgery is very much important. Is very much easy now. AI has become a tool that can create hurdles for the people. So it is the state that should ensure the standard of the digital process in the way that a crime that has committed should be prosecuted in a way that the right to a fair trial has not been violated, which is very important. This is from my side, Dr. Nazar.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your intervention. And now I go to Marin Ashraf. She's a tech research policy researcher, and I would like to ask you to use the next one to introduce yourself, and that will be followed by a question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nasir. Hi, everyone. My name is Marin, and I am a senior research associate at IT for Change, which is an India-based not-for-profit organization working at the intersections of digital technology and social justice. So my core area of work include working on online gender-based violence and legal and policy responses to it, digital platform accountability, information integrity, and AI governance issues. Very happy to be here and to share the space with the esteemed panelist.
Thank you so much, Marin. I know you are doing a fantastic job of research and informing the community. And Your work experience explores the intersection of tech and governance and social justice. From a feminist legal and policy perspective, how can judicial systems be better equipped to handle cases of online gender-based violence and platform-related harms, especially when evidence is embedded within opaque algorithms and transnational digital ecosystems?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nasser. So to answer that question, I would like to first briefly share some insights from a research that IT for Change, the organization that I work with, undertook on judicial approaches to online gender-based violence cases and the challenge in India and the challenges that are commonly encountered in prosecuting such cases, especially the digital evidentiary issues. So online gender-based violence is typically dealt as a criminal offense in India under the General Penal Code and the Information Technology Act. And as with any criminal offense, it becomes crucial to prove the guilt of the accused person beyond reasonable doubt. And in our study, we found that in several cases of online gender-based violence, it unfortunately failed to meet the high burden of proof that is required because of difficulties in bringing in expert testimony, relying on witnesses, and ensuring the admissibility of digital evidence. So under Indian law, digital evidence will be admissible under two conditions. Either it has to be, if the original computer source in which the evidence is recorded is produced, and in which case it's a primary evidence, or if the copies of the electronic record are produced, in which case we need a certificate of authentication. And in our research study, we found that in many cases, the court tend to dismiss the digital evidence because of lack of authentication certificate. And the issue is that it's very difficult to sometimes obtain the authentication certificate, especially if the complainant doesn't have access to the computer resource, or in many cases they might have applied to obtain the certificate but it is not issued, or they may not be aware how to get the authentication certificate. So in such cases, the court tend to dismiss, of course, because of concerns of authenticity, and that means depriving a crucial piece of evidence, which might only be the single evidence in many cases, and thus depriving access to justice for the survivors. Now, another issue is that in many cases, even if the prosecution fails to even submit digital evidence, and the main barrier here comes from the lack of cooperation from the digital platforms like social media platforms in responding to requests from law enforcement agencies to provide information. Despite the police asking for information from the social media platforms or from telecom service providers, sometimes there's a delay in responding to it. And another issue with respect to digital evidence is the threat to privacy. Because in many cases, the evidence and other materials and the devices has to be submitted to the state or the police. And there have been concerns of manipulation or leaking to the accused side. So there is significant threat to privacy in that regard, the chain of custody, in preserving the chain of custody. Now, apart from the digital evidentiary issues, I also wanted to touch upon one significant study, observation from our study, that is the gap in the court's understanding of online public sphere. So in many cases, we found that sometimes courts tend to treat online violences as less serious as an offense than when a physical harm is injured. Physical harm is, harm has occurred, because there's an assumption that online violence is trivial or it doesn't involve any physical injury, so it's fine. But in many cases, online violence is often accompanied with an offline crime. And in such cases, sometimes the court tend to focus more on the physical harm and ignore the online aspect of the crime. And so that's one of the main findings of our study. Similarly, in cases involving online violence, especially on digital platforms, there is a need to recognize the crucial role of platforms and the algorithms that they play in amplifying the harm that has occurred to the survivor. But sometimes the court tend to not look into the accountability of social media platforms or to issue orders in a timely manner to take down the content, because in an online space, virality sometimes amplifies the harm more than the content of the message itself. So, in terms of what the how we can better equip the
you have 1 minute.
yeah,
left?
thank you.
Thank you.
To deal with these cases. So first of all, evidentiary rules and procedures, as the previous panelists have also said, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But it would be good if digital evidences are not dismissed merely on procedural grounds, and if the court can use its inherent power to issue orders to summon evidence or to direct the competent person to issue the authentication certificate. So yeah, it's necessary that the court recognizes the challenges and enable the admission of digital evidence. And in OGBV cases, that's online gender-based violence cases, court should also look into the accountability of platforms for harmful content. This includes assessing the extent of their role in perpetuating the offense in question or issuing suitable orders to take down the content. And finally, it is very important to recognize the online public sphere and to go beyond the traditional understanding of harm that is focused only on visible or physical injury. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Marin, for a very elaborative work that you are doing. And I also have one apology from Honorable Justice Afi Kudomor from the High Court of Ghana. She was to join us online, but she got an emergency at the last minute and she could not be able to join. So apology from Honorable Justice Afi Kudomo from the High Court of Ghana. Professor, are you still online? Professor Peter Swear?
Yes, I am. I just had to unmute.
Yes. I have a follow-up question for you. If you were to think the whole of these issues and if you were to come up with one red flag, judges should look for a digital forensic report. What would that be?
Well, I hadn't prepared that question.
Yes.
I thought you might ask of one piece of advice to judicial systems that they would do.
Yes.
And I want to mention the problem of ransomware, which is the possibility that a bad actor will try to lock up the files of a court system so that the judges and the courts lose access to the files. And when I teach my cybersecurity class, I say to people, for ransomware, the most important thing is to have some offline backups of your records, if at all possible. And you also have to protect your backup system from attack because the bad guys try to get into your backup system. We've seen a lot of, in the United States, state and local governments get hit with these attacks. We've seen court systems get hit with these ransomware attacks. And having a good backup where you can go back and get everything the way it was yesterday, that's a huge help if you're able to have that kind of technical backup in place. You asked about red flags. I think the thing I would worry about is whether somebody on the other end of the line is really who they say they are. Right? We know in our personal lives that we think we might be talking to somebody on social media and it's somebody else. And so finding some way to have a channel to communicate with them and a second channel to make sure they are who they really say they are, that kind of two-factor thing is important because otherwise you might be getting evidence from somebody who's not even the right person.
Thank you, Professor. Now I go to Dr. Jacqueline. I know you are not a lawyer, but we are all, in some way or somehow will be ending up in court. So, what would be your suggestion or recommendations on spyware? If you could spend like 1 minute to respond to that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. We have in our project, Data Privacy Brazil, we are developing some key recommendations on the research. And just to also clarify that I spoke about the Brazilian case, but we also, this is not a exclusive of Brazil. We have cases in Colombia. We have a very important precedent in the US with the Pegasus and the ruling ordering to damages to Meta. But yeah, let me say some recommendations we are working on in terms of, I think we have 4 recommendations, key recommendations, I would say. The first one is to develop technical and legal standards for the digital chain of custody, including metadata preservation, access logs, authentication layers, and independent audit trails. The second one would be train judges and legal professionals in cybersecurity, digital forensics, and especially data protection. The digital knowledge gap within our courts is a risk we can no longer afford in this scenario. The third recommendation would be to equip courts with cybersecurity protocols and contingency plans to strengthen institutional resilience against cyber threats, including unauthorized access to judicial data. And last but not least, of course, promote multi-stakeholder dialogue among courts, technologists, civil society, and policymakers. I think judicial systems must evolve collaboratively to meet these realities we are talking about here. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Marin, can you share one way courts could be more responsive to survivors of online violence? If you could put that in 1 minute, I think it would be very short and clear.
Yeah, sure, I'll try. So I think one of the important ways, as I said in my previous intervention, that it's very important to understand the online public sphere itself and how the unique vulnerabilities that people face in the online sphere, especially also the role of the platforms and the algorithms in amplifying the harms. Secondly, it would be it's really important for the courts to uphold the right to privacy of the survivors in cases of online gender-based violence and take a more holistic understanding of privacy as comprising both informational, physical and decisional agencies. And I would also, as the panelists have also spoken, it's also very important to conduct periodic training for lawyers and judges, the legal fraternity, because as the technology changes, you also need to be updated about the kind of harms that it poses, especially to vulnerable communities like vulnerable groups. And so, yeah, and for instance, our organization has developed a resource guide for judges on how they can use the existing laws to successfully prosecute online gender-based violence cases and by respecting the rights of the survivors. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Marin, for your... now I go to his own judge of the High Court. How do you see the regional collaboration helping address these cross-border evidence issues?
Thank you very much, Dr. Naza. Regional collaboration is vital. First, because internet is borderless, the virtual space is basically doesn't respect the traditional boundaries we have known. And secondly, most of the progressive cybercrime and the cybersecurity laws have this extended jurisdiction. For example, in Tanzania, we do not have jurisdiction only against the people who commit these offenses while in Tanzania. The law, I think this is Section 4, Subsection 2 of the Cybercrimes Act of 2015, empowers a Tanzanian court to deal with anyone, anywhere in the world who attacks a system in Tanzania, or anyone using a computer system while in a plane or a ship registered in Tanzania. The law will catch up with you. So to be able to exchange data and get extra territorial expertise, one must be able to collaborate. And I'm seeing a positive development within the East African community where there are initiatives to empower judges and the legal fraternity, to borrow a phrase from my panelists here, on how to really get into the 21st century well equipped with protecting citizenry.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Judge. Uma, I know you from the legal perspective, serving the civil society. What do you think should be the legal safeguards that are of most urgent to protect, defendants in digital crime cases?
Very important question. There's a principle, the honorable judge will know that innocent until proven guilty. So a person is innocent until unless he is proven guilty. So there are certain challenges which are often faced by the defendants in the digital crimes. And I will just mention a few of them. One of them is like updating outdated legislations, because every day new thing is happening in the digital world. So with this, a law passed in 2015 cannot be brought in 2025 because digital crimes are creating or rising every second day. So I believe that the legislation need to be properly updated according to the needs of the digital world. Along with that, proper legal procedure. There should be a procedure to follow up the accused, who is the dependent itself. His right should be ensured. He should be given a chance of free trial. There should be a proper way of warrant seizing his property if it is involved in the digital crime. Like in Pakistan, unfortunately, I will mention that if somebody has done a digital crime, so the agency which is responsible for handling the digital crime will rush. They don't look up to you as a citizen. So I believe that it's very important to ensure the dependent protection. One more which is very important is the judges of the training to understand the digital forensics and the cyber laws. Like I'm mentioning that in the whole district Peshawar, which is the capital of my province, there are 1 or 2 judges who are handling the cases of cybercrime. So I believe that there should be enough courts to provide speedy justice, speedy system to the cyber cases, and that the judges should know really about the forensic, the cyber laws, and this should be included in the judges' training when they are recruiting. So this is what I believe. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. As the speaker, prepare for the parting shots. I have received an order from the High Court of Tanzania to open the Q&A for the audience. And before we continue, if you have any question, you can raise your hand. And before that, we have a question from online. If you can read that, and then we have a gentleman from, I believe, from Congo, DRC. After the online person, then you will come in for your question. And there is a lady over there. You'll be second. And I also saw a hand somewhere in the back. Okay. All right. Let's go.
Thank you very much. So for the record, I'm Oseke and I'm the online moderator. This question is from Marta Alicia, and Marta cites case in Ecuador and would like to know your perspective. I don't know if it will be contempt of court, but Ola Bini is a digital rights defender, has been facing a political judicial case in Ecuador since 2019. His case illustrates the risks of misusing digital evidence in judicial proceedings. In his trial, the prosecutor office used a simple photograph which showed a connection from an unverified user to an IP to support an alleged attempt to gain unauthorized access to a state telecommunication system. Martha says commonsensically that a single photograph is not in itself evidence of a digital crime. So Martha wants to know, in addition to the need for digital forensics, what other protocols must be in place to ensure that alleged digital evidence is not used to maliciously prosecute individuals? So that's the question. If you have any question, please do log online if you are joining us online and have your question in the chat box.
So, from whom is the question?
Yes, anyone can, any one of the panelists can respond to that question, and then we take the second question.
May I respond?
Yeah, you can.
Honorable Judge, you can.
I think we are usually not allowed to talk about any case that is currently in court, and we will refrain from doing so.
I will respond to on a general perspective that
But there is an order from the,
okay.
from the.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord. I'm just boiling.
Yeah, I think if the court the case is still active, it is still active, right? Yeah, I think that we will refrain from answering unless you just prepare your part in short, okay?
Okay.
We have a gentleman from DRC Congo.
Thank you for the insightful presentation. My name is Christian Fazili Miigo, and I'm a Congolese magistrate from DRC. So I would like to know with what specific actionable recommendations does the panel have for Congolese magistrates and court administrators in the resource-constrained environment to critically assess digital evidence present to them, and how to mitigate the most pressing cybersecurity vulnerability within the court in the operation. Thank you.
Any of the panelists, anyone?
Maybe I can.
Yeah, welcome, Professor.
Okay, there's many good possible first steps, but one thing is to have backup so that you don't lose the court records. And that's what I said about ransomware. So now, even in a resource-constrained place, digital storage is relatively inexpensive. And if you lose all the records because of a cyber attack, now you have a very hard time doing your judging. But if at least you have the records saved, then you can start again tomorrow and have a good chance to have a fair trial.
Thank you very much. To share a practical experience from my country, we have our slot in the data center. So the judiciary does not operate in silo, like it has its own way of preserving. No, we are part of the government. So the standard of security that applies to records of parliament or state house applies to the court as well. So we do not foresee anyone easily targeting the judiciary and succeeding, because you are targeting the heart of the government.
Thank you, Judge. I saw a hand, and then there's another hand over here. If you can be on the mic. So do we have to take all the questions and then we respond at once? Or we
I think that
they come?
As they come.
As they come, okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Adriana Castro. I'm a professor at Externado University in Colombia. And I would like to raise an additional issue. A moment before the digital evidence, the contact information and notification. The Ibero-American Data Protection Network, composed of data protection authorities, recently published an open letter to the companies accountable on data processing. It's an open invitation directed to the companies which massively process personal data and are not established in the states of the authorities of the Ibero-American network. The invitation is to, first, design a representative or a vocal for data protection before the national authority, and to provide contact details and empower them with judicial and administrative representation. Second, to provide an agile and effective communication channel regarding personal data processing in order to respond data owners and to receive a notification of a judicial process or administrative investigations.
So
and
can
third,
you ask your question because we don't have time?
This is evidence of some approach from data protection agencies that have to reinforce the calling of to multinational companies, but the real effect of this call will remain to be seen. I can imagine some challenges you have addressed doing these investigations. Not necessarily regarding data protection, but you may have some insights on how to deal with it.
Oh, okay. You can also share with that through email, so we can also, put that through our channels of communication.
Yeah, my question is from Umar Khan about the recent amendments in PICA Act in Pakistan, that it is all about to combat the harassment laws and cyber harassment at all. But do you really think that it really serves its purpose? Because it sparked to affect the basic fundamental rights of freedom of expression in Pakistan. Thank you.
Well, a very important question, and very much concerns has been raised in Pakistan regarding this recent amendment into the Prevention of Electronic Crime Act, where one of the amendment was if the government think that a false or a fake news has been shared, a person can be jailed for 5 years and can be fined for 3 million Pakistani rupees. Yes, law itself is not a bad thing, whether how the state is implementing it or the state agency implementing it. So I believe, yes, somehow I being from the digital background, from the legal background, I have concern over that. And I believe that what will be the standard for the government agencies to measure a news to be fake or false? Whether if somebody who is criticizing the government, is that a false or a fake news for the government? Whether he will be tried or prosecuted. So this is a question. I believe that the opposition parties in Pakistan also have concern with that, the human rights defender, the digital rights defender. And I believe that the court should look into that matter. So yeah, this is somehow a violation of the fundamental right.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
So, good morning all. My question is, how do we safeguard the dignity and privacy of people with disabilities? So this is a question. People with mental disabilities often fear judgment or exposure. How can courts protect medical information shared during hearings or ensure private virtual rooms for sensitive testimony?
Thank you very much for that brilliant question. Like I said earlier, the goal of cybersecurity is to ensure that the cyberspace is safe for all users, including people with disabilities and even children. And with progressive data protection laws, there are ways that judges are instructed to ensure in-camera hearing. So I do not have to go into the open court for a sensitive case involving someone who wants to protect their privacy. And also there are mechanisms to anonymize any information to make sure that no real names are used and still arrive to justice, but without unnecessary exposure. So everyone is catered for.
May I add just briefly on that?
Yes, go ahead, Professor.
So in the United States, we have a law about medical privacy that's called HIPAA, and which I worked on when we created it. And it has a mechanism for what they call qualified protective orders. So one possibility is only the judge looks at the evidence, the sensitive evidence in camera, just the judge. Another possibility is they close the courtroom just for the medical information so that both parties see it. And both of those are allowed by the judge to create a protective order around this very sensitive information. So there's a model for that you can find easily online if you look for it for qualified protective orders.
Thank you so much. I see. I don't see. Is there any question from online? Okay. Thank you so much. And now I go to. Is there anybody?
No, there was a lady who asked a question.
There was a lady who asked a question, I think.
That was not responded. I just wanted to say a sentence or two from the lady, a professor from Colombia. There are current ongoing UN mechanisms to ensure that country laws are not too restrictive. So there are diplomatic processes to collaborate and ensure that data flows easily for purposes of conviction and evidence, adducing evidence. At the moment, we are yet to verify all these protocols, but as soon as they are they are ratified, it will be easy to prosecute someone who does something wrong in Colombia while targeting a person in Tanzania, for example.
Thank you, Honorable Judge. Now we move to the parting shot. I will begin with Dr. Jacqueline. Today we have participated in this judging in the digital era, cybersecurity and digital evidence. If you look at the way you have interacted with the audience, the questions that they have brought to the panelists, what will be your parting shot today?
I think, and I'm going back to Brazil because it's the context that I know. In Brazil, we have the right to data protection as a constitutional right. This happened in 2022, and I think it was a great victory. We also have a comprehensive general data protection law we call LGPD that is in place, also with an independent data protection authority. But we still don't have a criminal data protection framework. So I think that's an important gap to address. And I think all of the questions and discussions that we raised here today could share this concern of having this framework to fight against privacy-related crimes and also these weaknesses of the judicial system, their ability to handle cybercrime effectively. So this gap in Brazil has been identified and debated in some legislative reform efforts, including the reform of the Brazilian Code of Criminal Procedure and some specific advocacy efforts, but no law has been approved so far. So I think that's one development that we still have to fight for.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. Marin, the same question goes to you also. Yes. Just in 1 minute, if you can give your parting shot, what
Sure.
you would like to be seen, for example, in the future?
Yeah, so speaking from the perspective of the area of work that I work in, that is online gender-based violence, I think courts should be safe spaces for women and other survivors of online violence that are seeking justice. It's very important that criminal justice system undertake ecosystem level changes in sensitization and inclusive policies and equip judges and law enforcement to deal with online violence cases in a sensitive and rights respecting manner. At the same time, it's also important to update our laws to reflect the current realities and to recognize newer forms of violence like gender trolling or gender-based hate speech, doxing. So not all jurisdictions have yet recognized. So changes at the legislative levels are also crucial for the judiciary to work effectively in these cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Peter?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for being able to participate remotely in this very well-organized session today. I want to come back to the data protection point that's come up a couple of times. So the Cross-Border Data Forum we created 7 years ago, and it has stated goals in the website. One of them is that government should get access to data when there's a legitimate government need. You know, there's an actual crime, maybe there's a warrant with a judicial court order. On the other hand, we also have to have privacy and data protection happen when these requests come in. So imagine if you're a company, or imagine if you're a court and there's a request from some other country and you don't know the practices there. Maybe it's a request for data that's really to stop political dissent. Maybe it's illegitimate and not protecting data protection rules. And so our work has been for 7 years to try to figure out, how do we have correct access when it's criminal and there's the right showing? How to have privacy and data protection when those rights need to be upheld as part of the system? And how can we make it workable so that the people who hold the data know what their responsibilities are and don't face laws that conflict against each other? So we've tried to write a lot of things. I put several links into the chat that could be made available to the in-person people afterwards, perhaps. But you have to both allow access across borders and protect people's rights when that's happening. And that's the challenge that I think we face very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Dr. Honorable, if you were to give us advice as a judge, what will be your parting shot today?
My parting shot actually is just to say thank you to the many people, especially the civil society fraternity, who are doing a fantastic job to ensure that there is capacity building for judges. My colleagues here from India and from Brazil, even from Pakistan, have highlighted that there is this knowledge gap. It's true that some of us are not aware of some of these developments in the cyberspace. You can find a court that is still in its, physical form, and if you ask someone about digital evidence, that is the hardest question you can ask. But we can generally narrow the gap by ensuring that we invite judges to some of these fora. We designate programs for capacity building, and many of us will attend. We will not stay in courts only to wait to convict someone wrongfully because we don't know the law or we don't know just a bit of science. So thank you very much, Dr. Naza. You have been a trailblazer in Tanzania. That's how you got me out of my chamber to travel with you many places to try and learn. And I can assure you that what you are doing is making a difference, not only in Tanzania, but across the continent and some other parts of the world. Asante.
Thank you. Dr. Umar, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nazar. And I believe this is for the second time I'm sitting with the people from the same background or the relevant background towards the legal or judiciary track. So I believe it should be continued. By the end of the day, crimes are happening, and it is the courts, the prosecutors, the lawyers, and the agencies who are going to handle these cases. And as mentioned by the Honorable Judge, High Court Tanzania, that the capacity building of the judges are very important. They should not just sit in the courts. It is very important, and I'm happy that from the last time, so when we sit in the Saudi, when we go back home, we just tried to have a training for the Judicial Academy of my province. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of the timing in the Ramadan. But I'm hopeful that this time, when I go back home, we are having some judges to be trained, inshallah, and we will be looking into your support. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Is the professor from Colombia still around? If you have 1 minute for your parting shot. If you have anything to say, 1 minute.
I would say just that there are still a lot of challenges. In Colombia, we have the main challenge of notification. I mentioned something about data protection investigations, but also in human rights procedures, we have a specific issue on notification. So that's one of the main capacity buildings areas that we will look forward. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Professor. I think I'll keep in touch. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending our session. We have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you so much for listening. And one of our goals of our session is to bridge the divide between the multi-stakeholder, and the judiciary, to make sure that we inform and transform the judiciary to become the better institution, and get the judiciary out of their silos, so we can make justice better for every single one of us. Thank you so much. So if we can come for a picture, for a photo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. This session is called Interregional Connections for Information Integrity. Across the world, we're seeing both authoritarian government and democratic ones with increasingly alarming tendencies, adopting practices that restrict freedom online. These include laws designed to silence critical voices, political motivated surveillance, and coordinated online operations that distort public opinion, debate, or spread hate. At the same time, platforms still struggle to offer consistent responses, and meaningful cooperation with civil society remains weak. The people pushing back against these threats are activists, journalists, researchers, civic tech groups, and these are often those most affected by this. But they are also operating in environments where sustainability is very difficult, especially now. What we are doing today live is a demonstration that cross-sector collaboration is possible, not only between countries and regions, but also across different branches of civil society. Whether we come from activism, academia, journalism, or other, our shared work on information integrity connects us, and in many cases, protects the civic space. In this session, we will explore 4 key areas where digital authoritarian practices most often appear. The first one will be censorship, blocking or controlling access to online information. The second one will be surveillance, monitoring or intimidating people online. 3 will be online information integrity, spreading false or harmful narratives. And the last one will be internet governance that basically is linked to the policies and systems that shape digital rights. With us, we will have me as a moderator. I'm Venezuelan. I'm a human rights advocate, director of products, a nonprofit working on information integrity in Latin America. Marion Francesco from Costa Rica. She will be online. She's a digital rights researcher from Provox team. Valentina Aguana from Venezuela. She's a system engineer and researcher at Conexión Segura y Libre, works on internet censorship and digital rights. Abdullah Ahmadi from Afghanistan. He is a human rights advocate focused on digital inclusion and civic space. He is the director of Afghanistan Democracy and Development Organization. Lilian Nalwanga from Uganda. She is program manager at CIPESA, and she works on internet policy and digital rights in Africa. Estefania da Silva from Venezuela. She is a digital research specialist focused on information manipulation, part of Provox team. Sasha Hanim online. She is an international relations analyst and academic focused on authoritarian influence and the impact of science and technology on society. Iria Puyosa from Venezuela and the US. She is senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and Tech Initiative. She is an expert on digital authoritarianism and governance. Roberta Braga from Brazil and the US. She is founder and director of Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas, DDIA, focused on a healthier internet for Latinos across the US and Latin America. And Marta Roldós from Ecuador. She's an investigative journalist, director of Fundación Mil Hojas. And with that, I will start with the first 2 questions regarding censorship. And this will be the following ones. What recent examples of censorship, formal or informal, has affected your country, and what resistant strategies, technical, legal, social, have been effective in countering your censorship? With that, I will leave the floor to Abdullah to his first question, and then to Valentina. Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the chance to speak about the situation in Afghanistan, where digital censorship has increased in recent years, and especially the civic space is closed in Afghanistan based according to the Civicas report. First, about the recent examples. Since the Taliban takeover in August 2021, Afghanistan has experienced both formal and informal censorship. Formally, the Taliban have restricted independent media by imposing new guidelines that ban critical reporting. Many TV channels and radio stations have been forced to close or deeply self-censor to avoid reprisals. Online, the Taliban have ordered internet service providers to block access to certain news websites and social media pages run by exiled Afghan journalists and human rights groups. They also monitor social media for dissenting voices. Informally, intimidation is widespread. Journalists, activists, and even ordinary citizens risk detention or threat if they share information that criticize the regime, especially on Facebook and WhatsApp, which are widely used in Afghanistan. Women voices are especially targeted. Female journalists face not only censorship, but harassment and ban from the working overall. This silencing has had a shocking effect on the flow of the reliable information inside and outside the Afghanistan. Second, about the resistance strategy, about your second question, despite the Afghan citizens and civil society group have found a way to resist. Technically, many people rely on the VPNs to access blocked website and social media platform. Encrypted messaging application like Signal and Telegram have become essentially for activists and journalists to communicate securely and share information without immediate detection. Some exiled Afghan media outlets maintain mirror sites and distribute news through the WhatsApp broadcast list to reach people inside the country. Legally, while there are almost no functioning legal pathway for media freedom under the Taliban rule, regional and international organizations have stepped in. Exiled Afghan journalists collaborate with the international human rights bodies to document press freedom violations, and some cases have been raised at the UN Human Rights Council and other form of the build pressure and protect journalists at risk. Socially, one of the most powerful strategies that have been solidarity network Afghan journalists, especially those now in exile, continue to publish news about the country through the diaspora-run media, podcast, and social media channels. Inside Afghanistan, people have access to this information. We also provide the training on the digital security and censorship escape. This is another strategy that we are using and organizing outside the country, that helping local activists and journalists to protect themselves online and find a safe channel to speak out. In closing, censorship in Afghanistan is part of the broad attack on the human rights. But despite fear and the strict rules, Afghan people continue to resist using technology, solidarity, and international support. I believe it is our responsibility as global community to amplify their voices, share tools and knowledge, and stand with the Afghan defending their right to speak and be heard. Finally, I call for the UN to work towards the legally binding convention on digital rights to protect freedoms like expression, privacy, access to information, and encryption online with a strong safeguard and inclusive governance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abdullah. Valentina?
Thank you, Marivi. Well, first, thank you. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And thank you, Abdullah. I think there is a lot of parallelisms that we can see in Afghanistan right now to what is happening in Venezuela. I'm going to specifically talk about internet blogs and how internet blogs are being used as a mechanism for censorship. I believe it's important to also have a clear definition of what an internet block is, and we define it as an intentional technical measure for impeding access to a specific service, website, or information on the internet. The block for us has to be technically measurable. It has to be consistent over time across different access points within the network, and it's also not the result of a technical problem, therefore intentional. Invest in Filtro, we have been documenting internet blocks for over 10 years, over a decade, and we have a pretty good understanding about or how the internet landscape in Venezuela and the Latin American region has been changing over the years. Just last year in Venezuela, I believe that entered what I call a new era of internet censorship, one that is more pervasive and completely changes the way that Venezuelans use the internet. We have documented that at least 61 independent media sites or independent media outlets in Venezuela are currently blocked, but the raw number itself doesn't really tell you anything. What we need to understand and we would need to know is that this represents practically the whole independent news media ecosystem in the country. So also civil society organizations have also been affected by these blocks. And there are not only news media sites, but fact-checking sites and as said, civil society organizations, NGOs, etc. But apart from this, I think one of the more severe things that we've seen is that since last year, the Venezuelan government has implemented blocks against social media platforms like Reddit, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, which, by the way, is currently still blocked in the country, and even messaging apps like Signal. We once thought that permanently blocking social media was a red line for censors, but unfortunately we know that that's not the case anymore, not only in Venezuela, but in different countries. And we have seen this spreading to other countries within the region, citing disinformation and public safety as an excuse for these internet blocks. Another very serious trend that we've seen is the blocking of critical internet infrastructure. We're talking about public DNS servers, like Google servers or Cloudflare's DNS servers, and also CDNs being blocked. We documented last year the block of CloudFront, that's the Amazon Web Services CDN. And as we can imagine, this was a disaster. Millions of sites across the globe relied on CloudFront, and we believe that the intention was not to block the CDN itself, but actually a website using its service. But these cause what we call collateral blocks or collateral censorship. This not only happens in Latin America. Right here in Europe, several ISPs in Spain are currently blocking whole IP ranges from Cloudflare, Akamai, Vercel, among other companies, trying to tackle copyright infringements during soccer match. And you can imagine how crazy it is that half of the internet is down in certain ISPs in Spain when this is happening, like when a soccer match is on. So measures to block content or platforms on the internet, this is very important, must be exceptional, proportional, and the least dramatic as possible, only doing what is necessary, and of course, through a legal process. So in summary, the censors are getting more sophisticated with the blocks, but also more reckless on what they're trying to block. And just like Abdullah said, what is happening in Afghanistan, in Venezuela, there is not a clear legal path to challenge these blocks. However, multilateral and international organizations are there for a reason, and we need to keep pressuring these because we know that the internet is a human right. So I think this role is very important. Finally, I think that the work of the civil society organization is key. We need to keep doing advocacy. We need to keep teaching about synchronization techniques. However, this is not enough. I think that other traditional solutions are not enough to fight in censorship, and I think the community, we need to invest time and effort and money in new solutions. Privacy by design, but also censorship by design. For example, Noticias Sin Filtro is an app we created as a newsreader app that has a censorship by design approach, which I think this is what we need to do going forward in the future.
Thank you very much, Valentina and Abdullah. And with that, I will leave the floor with the second topic ahead, that will be surveillance. And the two questions will be for Marta and for Lilian, what forms of digital surveillance have been used to monitor, intimidate, or silence civil society, journalists, or communities? And how have been affected these groups responded, and what protective practices or tools have emerged? With that, I will leave the floor to Lilian first and Marta the second.
Thank you, Marivi. Pleasure to be here. I'll try to be brief because this is a conversational session. In terms of forms of digital surveillance, what has been used, I think we've heard from the previous speakers. It's not different from whatever is happening in Africa. We are seeing various forms that are being used to monitor, intimidate, or silence civil society, journalists. And most famous, like everywhere, is phone tapping or internet interception, where governments and, of course, other actors for all the other reasons are using wiretapping, interception of calls, texts, and all that. And interestingly, this is well embedded in the legislation, where we have quite a number of countries that, including where I come from, Uganda, whether it's Tanzania or Kenya, we have interception of communication laws, and with that, governments are mandated to intercept calls wherever they think there is some sort of harm. Also, we've seen deployment of surveillance tools like spyware or malware on people who are targeted, whether it's activists, and we've had reports or seen reports with Citizen Lab releasing quite a lot of research on the use of Pegasus on opposition, but also it's also used in cross-border kind of surveillance where we have politicians being tracked in other countries or activists being tracked in other countries through use of these malware tools. Of course, also targeted social media monitoring, which may have automated bots or filtering and all that. But that surveillance itself, if it was being done for good, and again I put good in quotes, would not be an issue. But what we are seeing is that, yes, governments may want to lawfully have, they have legitimate concerns when it comes to, surveillance. But in most cases, the laws and policies that are putting otherwise say something totally different, especially when it comes to undemocratic countries or countries that are really deep down in repression. So there's a lack of oversight or limited oversight when it comes to, how far they can go with this surveillance. And again, I think that is where the issue is. Just wanted to also maybe highlight the amount of money or resources that are being put in these surveillance tools. And in 2023, there was a research by the Institute of Development Studies that documented about, I can't mention the names because the research is there, countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, Malawi, and Zambia collectively spent $1 billion US, in a year on digital surveillance tools. And these tools were being supplied by countries, US, UK, China, some countries in the EU, and Israel. And I mean, when you look at this vast amount of money and the state of the countries, or what could be used in spending on, doing public kind of, service and all that, that is something that gets you to understand that states are more interested in understanding what is being said against them or, silencing certain, voices than actually having that much money in that. But the other thing maybe that, as I come to the other question, is when we talk about surveillance also, in Africa, we also look at surveillance as a censorship tool, especially when it comes to, content filtering, the network disruptions that we are seeing. That is also one form of, surveillance. And we've been known, like other countries in Asia or in Asia mainly, where internet shutdowns have become a pandemic of its own. And in 2020, last year, over 21 shutdowns were documented. And now you can imagine if you're to connect to the internet, then it will kind of prompt how are you connecting, and then that could also, get into that. So in conclusion on this question is these tactics are usually, they combine technically sophisticated tools that we've already had, which having, legal or extra legal measures that are really being used to suppress dissent. And it also makes detection very difficult for the targeted individuals, because at times, by the time you get to know you're surveilled is probably when you're being arrested, and the content that is shown to you, then that's when you get to find out what is really happening. So this is a growing concern in Africa, and I think it's also now becoming a very global concern when it comes to, rights, especially the right to privacy and freedom of expression and access to information. How are the groups being affected, how they're responding, and practices? I think what we are seeing is a lot of coalition movement building, within the civic space. We have, for instance, for the shutdowns, we have the Keep It On campaign by Access Now. We have associations like Digital Resilience Network, which comprises about 10 organizations that are coming around to, say no, push against this kind of, surveillance. And mainly in East Africa, where I'm coming from, we are seeing there's an organization that I can mention, TATOA, which is in Swahili means solve, brings together organizations to build share tools, conduct capacity building, and all that. And last but not least is researching and documenting and being able to show where surveillance is happening for purposes of policy making, advocacy, and other indicators, have the information there so that we can always push against surveillance. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, I'll leave the floor to Marta. Marta, who is online.
Sorry. I'm connecting. Sorry. Okay. Now I'm ready. Sorry. I would like to say that we have had the same experience that the previous speakers have explained in all those matters. In the case of Ecuador, we have, in the matter of surveillance, the questions are surveillance for what? Because we were presented with the idea that surveillance was a tool for security against crime in a country where crime has risen exponentially, while the government was applying these mechanisms of surveillance to journalists, to social to civil society, while the narcos were thriving. So surveillance for what? What is the form of sending to the public the idea of surveillance? I explain this because in our country, it has just been approved a new intelligence law that made surveillance actually legal in every aspect of it if it is conducted by the intelligence unit from the governmental intelligence unit. So that's very, very a huge preoccupation right now. With the new law, we are not having any kind of register of the intelligence operations for history. They are going to be destroyed. And the intelligence unit is going to oversize themselves. So that's a step for the worst in the country right now in the matter of privacy and digital rights. In other aspects that I would like to highlight is that in the past, that's not just now. We have had since Korea's government and this implementation of new systems of surveillance, every type of form of digital surveillance that also was part of a more broad scheme of surveillance in general, also in the real life. So we have had man-in-the-middle attacks. We have had a pack rat. We have had all our dealings with Pegasus and all these things that are like on trend. Everything that has been trending in the world for surveillance has been used in our country also. No hacking team. It's like it goes like waves, and also almost always, mainly journalists, but also activists, have been attacked by these instruments. That's in the things that has been done in Ecuador, not just while during the authoritarian regime from Rafael Correa, but also the governments that came after it. It was like a build capacity of surveillance that the next government, it was very difficult to restrain themselves from using. There was a brief moment of apparently clarity. The CENAIN, which was the intelligence office, was actually closed, but a new office was opened that was called CS, that had allegedly more more controls from the state and from the control organisms, but it hasn't worked like that actually. And the problem with
Marta,
with
sorry.
surveillance.
30 seconds.
Hello?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, that was the first question. In the second question, we have had the what was the affectation? The affectation was that the people were not was just their privacy was exposed, but the problem was that it was weaponized. The information obtained through surveillance was weaponized by the state in the government from Korea's regime to pieces for character assassination in the media, and in the following governments. The problem is that also it didn't obey just to the state. Some non-state actors like narcos had allies in the surveillance community.
Okay, Marta, sorry to interrupt. We're done with that point. Thank you very much. We see more similarities, although we are far away. We see the points of encounter. Now we're going to the third point, that will be information integrity. And with that, I will leave the floor to Estefania to talk about this.
Thank you, Mariby. Well, at Provost, we have seen several patterns of disinformation and narrative manipulation on social media in Latin America that have been repeating in several countries. For example, in the case of Venezuela, government entities and members of the cabinet spread manipulated information and launched smear campaigns against their opponents by activating not only bots, but also networks of coordinated users, real people like you and me that create several accounts and replicate the same content spread or promoted by the state with little to no modification. And to incentivize the participation in these activities, individuals are paid with state fund, which is a big issue. And given the country's severe economic situation, this incentive the creation of these networks, because people see this as a side job, so to speak. And the same pattern has been replicated in countries like Cuba and Nicaragua, where the government initiates a disinformation or a smear campaign and coordinated users replicate the content. And it even goes as far as Venezuelan campaigns trending in Cuba or Cuban campaigns trending in Venezuela. And this happened because these governments help each other to amplify these narratives and create the appearance of widespread support or buzz around them. This type of behavior aims to divert the attention from the real events happening in the country, especially given that social media platforms are often used to access unbiased information and to protest against daily occurrences. In fact, the influence and the reach of these platforms are such that there have been cases of people being arrested for social media posts that are contradict the official state narrative. And regarding the second question about the responses that have worked or failed, digital activism has played a vital role in Venezuela. For example, the teachers' union is highly organized in the protest to highlight the wage declines or the breaches of contract, and they combine the digital demonstration with protests on the streets. We can say that these much needed actions have been met with repressive countermeasures, such as the implementation of laws like the so-called hate law, which criminalizes the protest and is used to justify the arrest. Another thing that is very important, and with this I'll be done, is the independent media outlets and the formation of coalitions with fact-checking teams and initiatives and organizations like Probots that had become essential and pioneering because these actions aim to analyze the digital content, educate the citizens, and on how to identify disinformation or manipulated narratives, and also to promote digital security practices as well as tools like the use of VPNs, for example, to avoid censorship. And this work at the end ensures that even though the traditional media is mainly controlled by the state, there remains access to verified and independent information that reflects the true reality of what's happening in the country.
Thank you very much, Stefania. With that, Sasha, I will ask you to be brief, please.
Yes, I'm going to stick to my time. Thank you so much for your introduction. So when we talk about information integrity, the question is what information we can trust, right? And when we ask ourselves what types of narratives of manipulation or disinformation are spread in the region, that is a question we actually want to know. And in that regard, I do agree with the previous speakers on cooperation between actors, on the situations in which these campaigns are spread. And I also only want to add a few points upon that. So the first is concerns over disinformation and narrative manipulation not being taken as seriously as they should by decision makers, state actors, maybe civil society to one extent does care about it, but we see again and again examples that when compared to other regions, such as the European Union, in Latin America in general, disinformation is not seen as a security issue. It's seen as a distortion of information spreading. As a result, there is many ways in which information is spread. Some of these have already been mentioned. And I would only want to add to the first question, how important is the context? Because when we have disasters, when we have uncertainty, when we have political unrest, when we have domestic controversial issue, those are the areas in which these campaigns thrive. And these are the areas with not only state actors such as Russia or China or any other authoritarian actor or any other actor with an agenda thrives, but also untraceable, independent disinformation spreaders. So regarding the second questions, what responses from the civil society, media, and academia or institutions have worked or failed in restoring narrative integrity? I think there is a lot of work being done by civil society in the region that is obvious, that is strong. The region's, as I mentioned, is a little bit behind in counter-narrative operation or disinformation responses, but we do see a raising awareness. And this raising awareness has created a door for discussion, which in some cases has translated into actual responses. And I just want to mention one case with the 15 seconds I have left.
Excuse me, I will have to to stop you here. Yeah, sorry, the time was up, but I will leave it that way, and I will move forward with the last two questions. The first one will be for Roberta, and the second one for Iria. Please do 3 minutes each, and we will finish with that. Thank you very much, Roberta.
Thank you, Marivi. Good morning, everybody from DC. So the two countries I can speak most closely to are the United States and Brazil, my two home countries. And here we're talking about models of governance that the region has been implementing. And I think, as we know, in the United States, there really are no central governance mechanisms for things like data privacy, internet governance. And so by default, not only do the states sort of make a lot of the laws, which can really lead to some decentralization, some difficulties for businesses in adhering to this, some inadequate enforcement, and some diversity in approaches between states. But we also see that the United States prioritizes at its core tenet freedom of speech, which by default puts governance mechanisms almost entirely in the hands of social media platforms. In the US this year, we're seeing that a lot of the social media companies have moved toward a community-driven mode of content moderation, which I think has its pros and cons and has been really hotly debated here in Washington, DC, and in California and other places. That model has been tried by X, as we know, and actually our team at DDIA downloaded 1.7 million tweets in English and Spanish, notes in English and Spanish dating back to 2021, and we'll share some findings of that on July 9th if you're interested. But that model really hasn't met a need for addressing online harms in real time. For example, it takes 14 days for a note to go from submission to publication on average. And then Brazil, my other home country, has really taken a bit of a different approach. Brazil has the Marco Civil da Internet, which is almost our digital civil Bill of Rights. And it really pushes for net neutrality and privacy and freedom of expression, as well as data protection really at its core. It's something that needs to be updated and is being discussed now. And then we have our general data protection law, which I think really mirrors the European GDPR, emphasizes user privacy and data protection, but there's a lot more that needs to be done, I think, for us to really give these types of mechanisms the teeth they need to ensure our safety online. So Marivi, I will leave it at that. I know we're short on time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. With that, Iria.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to try to be very brief. One of the issues I'm concerned about at the moment is the pressures the civil society organizations, digital rights organizations, and internet governance organizations are facing, given the pressures from the current geopolitical dynamics and pressures over the multi-stakeholder internet governance model due to the change on the global digital company I'm bringing up. And I'm also particularly interested in the way these dynamics are playing on Latin America, Africa, and Asia organizations who are also facing a sharp decline of funding available for the kind of work they are doing. The kind of work my colleagues in the panel have been talking about: censorship, circumvention, disinformation, content disinformation, looking protecting the data, personal data, content surveillance. All that very important words, as well as a multi-stakeholder governance role the civil society organizations play. Is in danger is because of the lack of sustainability in the long term for these kind of organizations, particularly for smaller organizations in the global south who are losing critical expertise due to the lack of funding. And I think this is a conversation we should be having in the Internet Governance Forum, because even though it's not related with the core resources of the internet infrastructure, is core to the internet governance model. So we want to have a multi-stakeholder model of governance, it requires the presence of civil society organizations. And civil society organizations, says to exist, is no way for us to defend the multi-stakeholder model, and it's going to be a model run only by states, big corporations. So the survival of the internet multi-stakeholder model of governance is tied to the survival of sustainability of civil society organizations working on this space. That is why my team in the Atlantic Council Democracy and Tech Initiative is aiming to have a systemic assessment of the support need of these kind of organizations working in digital rights and internet governance. And we are exploring the way to partner with philanthropic donors and realigning states in order to identify mechanisms for channeling resources towards civil society organizations. This is part of the mission we are focused on the coming year, try to understand ways to support the needs of civil society organizations in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia, developing countries working in meaningful access to internet connectivity, digital public infrastructure, and internet and data governance. To end, very, very concrete recommendations for governments and funders, it's important for them to strengthen capabilities for prioritizing partnerships with local civil society in the countries of the Global South, Latin America, Asia, and Africa, particularly those organizations working in key areas like connectivity, meaningful connectivity, artificial intelligence, linking to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is very, very important for the Global South, particularly for African countries, all the issues of data governance and the internet governance itself. For the civil society organization, initial recommendations is to try to work together, exploring the ways we can foster South-South collaboration in order for organizations from Latin America and Africa or Africa and Asia get projects, joint projects, because we are seeing in this conversation where the issues are similar in our regions, but small organizations were isolated, and having coalitions working together would be helpful in order to make the most for the scarce resources we have right now. It will help this organization, this kind of partnership, to collectively navigate this geopolitical shift and this change on the global internet governance brought by the Global Digital Compact new state of play. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iria, and everyone online and in person. I will leave just two brief questions. Do you believe, for everyone on the audience, in person and online, do you believe that there is at least one authoritarian trend in your country? Say yes with the hand.
Sure.
I see all of us have some, and I see from the audience that there's two. And did you learn something about a tactic, idea, or alliance that you can use today for your own country? In my case, which I did. Some from the audience too. I'm happy to see that. Well, with that, I will close because we don't have more time. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the ones online and in person. By listening to each other, sharing concrete experiences, and reflecting across countries' role and challenges, we have shown that cooperation to protect information integrity is not just possible, it's already happening. And this session, this event in general, remind us that resisting online authoritarian practices for a healthier and safer internet for all is not just about identifying the problems, but it's also about building these bridges that we were talking about. Bridges between regions, between diverse stakeholders, and between different areas of civil society that are the one leading this fight every day. Let's carry these ideas forward and keep this collaboration alive. Thank you very much.